Welcome everybody. This is my lecture for grammar on Trivium method, and I wanted to start talking about putting Trivium method in the context of cognitive liberty. Cognitive liberty, as it says in the curriculum, is put simply about thinking for yourself, and it's basically the process of learning to be a sovereign individual, of not allowing others to make your decisions for you. And but a big part of that is learning to make better decisions for yourself, learning to really be responsible for your own decisions and your own life and your own needs, and not be putting that off on someone else. So, in terms of Trivium method, without getting too deep into that, I feel that process it's really important for becoming an adult in general. I mean, recognizing that we live in a world in which we don't get to choose who we pledge allegiance to, and we don't get to choose which authorities we recognize or not. All that said, that it's still an important role for adults to play in their own lives. That's what being an adult is to me personally. Is not so much what sort of a car you drive, what kind of a job you have, but how much are you really taking responsibility for yourself and aware of who you are and what your life is about, what you're living for, and how much of that are you really bringing to bear, and how much of that are you putting your money where your mouth is. It's easy to say that you feel that way or think that way or talk that way, but it's tough out there. It's tough in life, and we got to choose our battles, and we have to choose wisely. But it's part of growing up, and I mean, that gets back into the whole thing of extended adolescence and why that's such a thing in our culture. And it's because at least in my opinion, it's because that these things aren't taught. That there is no real self-reliance, no personal authority, no personal sovereignty being given to young people. They're taught the opposite. They're taught to abdicate responsibility and authority to someone else somewhere else, and not to really take it upon themselves to understand that they are responsible and they are the authority in their own lives, and that nobody's going to handle your business for you. And by business I don't just mean business, I mean everything in your life. But even in less political terms, this is ostensibly part of a course on magic. I'm not really focusing on magic, because this is to me a system that applies to absolutely anything. If I was doing a longer course, I would definitely get into applied theory for magic and applied practice. But I think it's more important to teach the basics of the idea of this, and it can be applied to learning just a straightforward discipline for your job, for your schooling, for whatever you're doing. But even in terms of magic, that same thing I'm talking about is very important, because one of the most important things in magic is will, your willpower. And if you if you think that you're going to do something on any plane of existence without having a very strong sense of who and what you are and what you're capable of and your willpower, and you're not willing to work on your mental capabilities, then you're really just grasping at straws and engaging in superstition. You know, and superstition, you know, it works sometimes. It does. I don't have much doubt about that. I've seen it. But that's not really what most people are looking for or wanting when they're talking about magic. So, I mean, it doesn't matter what you apply this to. If you're just wanting to apply this to very mundane matters, such as your own education, your own thinking process, or your magical work, or your political work, or anything. I mean, they all connect together to me, because that's how I think. I see the connections between things, and I recognize patterns, and you know, that's kind of the strong point of my thought process. So, yeah, I wanted to start with that idea that's what this is about. And, you know, it's not about becoming a political activist, you know. I respect that route, but that's not my route, and I'm not trying to make it yours either. But like I say, it's very important for all of us to take responsibility to be the authority in our own lives, and to make our own decisions, and to learn to make better decisions. So with that, I'm going to get into my notes here. I have multiple notebooks, and I have just pages and pages of notes. Every time I see a link, every time I come across information I'm not aware of that seems interesting, or that even if it doesn't seem interesting, if I think it's bullshit and I don't have time to look at it right then, I'll make a note of it and then go research it later, hopefully. Sometimes I don't. You know, you gotta pick your battles. You gotta make time for what's important and let the rest go sometimes. But yeah, I mean, I have pages and pages of notes, and I haven't always been this way. Like, for a long time in my life, I was like, man, I think about so many things, and then I just don't write them down. And then, you know, when I was younger, I smoked a lot of cannabis. So, I mean, but even now, like, I think about a lot of things, and I don't smoke cannabis. And, you know, you just can't remember everything that you think about, and especially the particular way that you thought about it, because, you know, that matters. You know, the context matters, and the particular way you say something, especially if you're a writer, you know, the particular idea framed in the particular way you're framing it is really important. So notes. Notebooks. I know, like I was saying, I didn't do it for years, but I finally got to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm a big boy now, and I'm gonna handle my business like a big boy and take notes and really keep track of what I'm thinking about, what I want to think about, what I want to write about, what I'm interested in, what I'm researching, you know? So I really can't recommend that enough. It's key. Alright, so in the last video I was talking about with grammar that I broke it down as far as the ages of grammar from you know, 1 to 10 being the grammar age, where as a child you are learning vocabulary and learning words, you know, learning the core of your vocabulary. Hopefully you're still learning vocabulary as you get older, but that's my point with this, and with the logic phase from 10 to 20 as well, that your when you learn those things, when you learn vocabulary, grammar, and you learn logic as a young person, you're not really taught to question those things, to wonder if what you're being told is true. And you know, that's a big part of what Trivium method is sort of a second process of that, of going back through your own grammar, your own vocabulary, and your own logic, and learning what you are doing right, what you did learn correctly, what is factual, and learning what isn't. And something you hear a lot in the Trivium community is removing the contradictions, and that's a big part of the logic phase. You know, because we're learning this right now, logic and grammar are two separate things. They're two separate phases. And it is sometimes important to keep those two things separate and have two separate steps. But a lot of times I find that they absolutely go hand in hand, that you cannot, you know, really evaluate information without going into logic and you know, applying logic to what it is you're learning. I mean, you can just, you know, absorb all kinds of data, but it's kind of a waste of time unless you're really evaluating, you know. And sometimes that's a good thing. It just depends. A lot of times for the initial phase of grammar, when you're studying something you don't know anything about, then it's really good to just sort of take in a lot of information. Just, you know, survey basically what's being said, what's written, what's being proposed, what the basic, you know, properties are, what the history of, you know, whatever it is, that you're taking in a whole broad spectrum from multiple perspectives and multiple sources. And then after you do that, you go through and sort of filter and say, okay, well, this is contradicted by this, so I'm gonna go ahead and I find this evidence to be more supportive of this theory, so I'm gonna go ahead and start leaning this way. But I mean, you really gotta be, bias is something you really have to be careful with, and we all deal with it. We all have our biases. We all, you know, depending on how we were brought up, how we think, how we've been trained, we are gonna have particular biases, you know. And even if that's like a rebellious bias where you're less likely to take an authority's word for something, you know, that's something I deal with a lot, as you can probably tell. And you know, sometimes that's completely false. Sometimes the authorities speak the truth. And just because somebody's got a fancy degree and, you know, is speaking from a place of authority doesn't mean they're wrong. Sometimes they're dead on. So, I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what their authority is or isn't. What matters is what they're saying. What kind of logical sense and what sort of grammar work they have to support, what body of evidence they have to support what they're saying. That's what matters. And that actually gets me into these two links that I gave you for research on the internet. One is, scroll up here, how proper online research works. And the other one is the research process. So in both of those you see a huge bias towards authority, that you want to make sure that it's an authoritative website before you